Thank you for joining me for this brief tutorial focused on managing pipette calibration schedules to be used with the PCS in the ArtelWare application. I've got some details to share with you, so let's go ahead and get started. Prior to adding a pipette schedule in ArtelWare, several other tasks should have been completed before now. Adding a user, adding a location, adding a device, namely a pipette, and creating a calibration plan. If you haven't performed these steps, go ahead and go back and do them now. But if you have performed these steps, let's go ahead and talk about how you create a pipette calibration schedule within the ArtelWare application. Now, there's a couple of different steps to adding a schedule for a pipette in ArtelWare. The first is creating a schedule using the Create Schedule shortcut on the Get Started bar. The second is by navigating to the configuration icon on the far left panel and going to the Schedule section. But for today, let's go ahead and use the Create Schedule icon on the Get Started bar. The moment I select Create Schedule, I'll then be asked to indicate what type of schedule I'm creating. So today I'm creating a pipette calibration schedule, so I'll go ahead and click OK. Now the schedule name can be anything that you desire. It's important to note that typically there's one or maybe two master schedules that contain all of the pipettes in any one particular facility. There usually isn't a need to have multiple schedules that all have to deal with pipette calibrations unless you're performing interim verification checks or routine checks, as well as a full pipette calibration. In this case, I'm going to add a semi-annual calibration because I calibrate my pipettes every 6 months. Now, the name is the only required field in this case. The description is optional. The type will automatically default to pipette calibration because that's what I had selected on one of those first screens from the Get Started shortcut. The next thing I need to consider is how often do I want this particular interval to repeat? Now, since this is a semi-annual pipette calibration, I'm going to have it repeat intervals every 6 months. Next, I have a choice of do I want that interval to repeat from its completion date, which is the date of the actual calibration, or do I want it to repeat from a due date? So a very specific thing to note, in this particular case, if I select from due date, you'll notice that the date on the bottom of the ArtelWare application says July 8th. If I select from due date, that means this pipette will always be due every July 8th and every February 8th, regardless of when the actual calibrations occurred. So again, selecting the due date radio button means that your pipette will always be due on that date, regardless of when it was last calibrated. So I'm going to select from completion date because I want this schedule to repeat from the actual calibration date of the pipette. So next we need to add some information. We need to add the pipettes and their calibration plan. So I'll click on the plus sign. From here, I'm shown a few different options. Now, typically, you're probably going to have a much larger list than I do. And if that's the case, you have these very helpful filter icons that help you quickly filter on various fields that relate to the pipette itself, and then a filter icon for calibration plans that help you filter on various fields in the calibration plan itself. But because my list is very small, I can easily navigate around. It's important to note that the calibration plans that are listed will only be applicable for the volume of the pipette that's in selection. So let's go ahead and select this pipette, and I have a couple of options. I have an ISO calibration plan that utilizes ISO 8655-2022 specifications, or I have an option to use this user-defined calibration plan, where I've specifically defined the pass or fail tolerances. For this pipette, I'm going to go ahead and use the ISO tolerances from 2022. So I've selected my pipette, I've selected the corresponding calibration plan, I've confirmed all of the details of the calibration plan, and then last but not least, I need to select the first due date. This pipette is going to be due today, so I'll go ahead and select OK. Next, I'll go ahead and select a second pipette. So this is where that master calibration plan comes into play. I have the second pipette that I'm actually going to use the user-defined tolerances for. So again, I have my pipette selected. I have my calibration plan selected. I'm confirming the calibration plan details. But this pipette is not due until September. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first due date for this pipette and click OK. So again, as I mentioned, you can have one master schedule that has all kinds of different pipettes and calibration plans within it, and they all have different due dates. You can see that I've got this pipette that has a due date of 7/8/2024, and this pipette that has a due date of September 6th, 2024. So once you've added or taken away pipettes from this schedule, you can go ahead and select the Save icon, and now your schedule is in place. So now if I head back to the home screen, I'll see that I have one pipette that's due, and that's the pipette that I selected that's due for today. Another important thing to note is that if you want to utilize the calibration label function of ArtelWare, and you want those calibration labels to have the next due date, it's very, very important that you create schedules within ArtelWare. There are a lot of customers that will not utilize the schedule feature within ArtelWare because maybe they have a master scheduling software that controls the scheduling for all of the items in their laboratory, not just pipettes, but also instruments, etc. However, again, if you want to use the pipette calibration label within ArtelWare and you want the next due date to be listed on the label, you'll want to create a schedule within the application itself for all of those pipettes. Okay, that concludes our brief tutorial. Do you have additional questions? Please contact us at 1-800-225-4034 option 3 or at support@aicompanies.com. Thank you.